Hello. How you doing, Craig?
Alita and Craig, just to let you know, it's 6:30 right now.
All right, say let's just give it another moment or two for people to come in before you provide your intro.
Okay.
Yeah, let's give it till 6:32. Maybe we should get started now. What do you think, Craig?
Sure.
6:30. Okay, Kevin, if you will.
Welcome, everyone. If this is your first time joining us virtually, you will notice that you are currently muted, and everyone will remain muted throughout the meeting, except for the committee co-chairs, Craig and Alita, and any presenters. As we move through the agenda, the co-chairs will call on members of the public wishing to speak. You can participate by going to the reactions icon on your device and pressing the raise hand button, not the wave or thumbs up, as those will disappear. Only press it once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you were calling in on the phone, it is *9 to raise hand and *6 to unmute. Be on the prompt, be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once the co-chairs call on you. The chat is available for technical support only to help with Zoom software problems, not to ask questions of the co-chairs. it will not see the chats. If you're using an older version of Zoom, you'll need to go to the participants section where you will find the raise hand feature there. Please do not raise your actual hand or wave at the screen because we may not be able to see you. Chat me, I'm here for support. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Well, I'm Alita Camp, and welcome to the November meeting of the Congestion Pricing Task Force. My co-chair, Craig Lader, is also here, although dark at the moment, but I know he's around. I've heard him. So
I'm here.
welcome. There you
Hi,
go.
everyone.
So welcome, everyone. Craig will do his updates because he's a data person, and then we'll move on to comments from the public, comments from the board, and a resolution if that seems appropriate, or more than one. So thank you, everyone, for being here and listening and participating. Craig, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Alita. Good evening, everyone. So I guess if we're technically following the agenda, I may just swap items one or two, but they're basically one and the same. I'll be providing some just more general updates since our last meeting of this task force was back on September 12th. And then a little synopsis of the October 2nd meeting of the Traffic Mobility Review Board, which for those of you who are new to this task force, welcome if that's the case. They are the board that has been appointed to determine all of the policies related to congestion pricing, related to the actual cost structure, the fee structure, the toll, if you will. So the general update is that assuming that everything continues to go according to the current timeline and without any unexpected or unforeseen barriers that come up, the estimated start date is somewhere in spring 2024. I've seen late April, I've seen May, but that is of course pending that nothing happens along the way. And for those of you who follow the news, you may have seen reports that the MTA chairman has been raising the alarm that if any of these lawsuits that are out there were to succeed in any way, that would perhaps cause congestion pricing to be delayed. And in regards to lawsuits, there are two that have been filed from New Jersey, and there's a new one that came up since the last time, and that is one from Bergen County officials and Fort Lee, where they are filing a lawsuit, basically questioning the environmental assessment that the MTA put out and the impacts that would be expected due to projected truck diversions of traffic going to the George Washington Bridge and avoiding the toll zone and avoiding entering Manhattan via the Lincoln Tunnel or Holland Tunnel, and the resulting reductions and impacts on air quality. The EA said that that congestion would, I believe it said, increase, or truck traffic would increase by 0.88%, so less than 1%, in that there was a range of like 0.4 something to 0.8 something percent increase likely in potential air quality impacts and increased pollutants. So there is that lawsuit. And then there was also another lawsuit that was filed by a number of state officials. And the interesting development just over the last day with that one was that MTA Chair Janolina was actually in New Jersey yesterday and met with New Jersey officials, and according to reports, there was discussion about a potential settlement to this lawsuit that New Jersey has put forward. Basically, I think what New Jersey officials are looking for, basically for the MTA to provide some mitigations similar to what they did in areas like the South Bronx, where when the environmental assessment was revised as in advance of the finding of no significant impact being issued, they basically said, we're going to provide a significant amount of funding to mitigate some of the projected adverse impacts that the environmental assessment spelled out. So they laid out, and we talked about this at the last meeting, a number of measures that would do so, and that helped to at least to some degree satisfy some portions of those communities. I can't
Hey,
speak for what effectively it was, but that's what essentially New Jersey is looking to do, and apparently there are negotiations taking place.
they became serious about that after Richie Torres made a big fuss about the potential impact, and the MTA's first response was that they would buy electric buses in the next procurement, as though that would adequately cure the concerns of the South Bronx, which is an issue that people have raised. Pollution doesn't sit still, it doesn't disappear, it doesn't dissipate, it moves. And the mere fact that they're trying to settle with New Jersey suggests that maybe the people in Fort Lee, maybe they have a point. But go ahead, Craig, don't let me interfere.
That's fine.
We,
And then
just can't take, I just don't think we could take the statements in the environmental assessment as gospel, because they are written in order to procure a certain result. So there, I've said my piece for now.
and I will contest that to some extent, but we've had that discussion before. The other just piece of news more locally is that there was a walkthrough of the 60th Street toll zone boundary by a number of elected officials and community board reps, and I believe that our community board district manager was part of that group, as were people like Gail Brewer, and I believe Julie Menon was there. I don't remember who else was. I wasn't there. I wasn't invited. But apparently that was useful. And if anyone had seen news about delays until after Thanksgiving, what that story actually was that, as I think Gail Brewer, who represents that area on the city council, noted, there's something that people may be familiar with, the Thanksgiving Day Parade, and the tolling structures that are in place are going to be an impediment to the floats. So they discussed how to deal with that, and I think the plan is that the tolling structures will have to be removed each year in the days leading up to the parade in order to accommodate the floats, which I think is a little bit of comic relief in talking about this whole thing, but
very necessary, because those floats are essential to New York City and to Thanksgiving all over the country. So we can't have it any other way, except not
absolutely.
them at all.
And it speaks to the fact that at least when there are obvious issues that come up, that there are ways that they could be addressed. So speaking about the structures, that I'm sure many people have noticed that the tolling infrastructure has been installed. And you will see that on the blocks in both directions leading up to that 60th Street boundary. So they're placed between 60th and 61st Streets because the toll zone is inclusive of 60th Street. So that leads me to the Traffic Mobility Review Board meeting that took place on, I think we said October 2nd. And one of the interesting things that came out of that meeting was that, and this came from the discussions that had taken place earlier in some of the comments of the Traffic Mobility Review Board members themselves, that they are now looking into tolling only when entering the zone. So anyone who's been part of these discussions knows that the environmental assessment and the plan was always predicated on that vehicles would be tolled either entering or exiting the zone. It would be generally only once per day, with perhaps some exceptions to that, but the vast majority of vehicles, and certainly passenger vehicles, would be tolled once a day, but it would happen either going into the zone or going out of the zone. And one of the questions that came up on the Traffic Mobility Review Board was, well, what happens if you are if you are a shift worker who works overnight and you are going in at a time where the tolls are supposed to be lower because there are discounts that are expected to be in place during evening or late night hours and overnight hours. But if those workers are leaving after 6 a.m. when the daytime rates perhaps take effect, then it would be an unfair burden on them. So the Traffic Mobility Review Board is looking only into tolling in one direction. in which case I would imagine that if that decision is ultimately made, they may be removing some of the toll structures that were put up in place. And I assume that what happened was that those toll structures went up because the contract never assumed that it was that such a major change was possibly going to occur. But here we are. So that's one thing that we don't know how that's going to play out. And I'll just preface the end game. It's not a guarantee, but it sounds as if that there is a decent likelihood that when the MTA board meets the last week of the month, this November, that the Traffic Mobility Review Board will have submitted their recommendations to them. I don't know. I don't know that. I don't have insider information to know that that is going to happen, but that is the rumbling that I have heard.
Well, if I could just interject, the meetings that the TRMB have had, and although we've passed a resolution, I can't speak for other boards, asking for Manhattan residents to be on that board, there are none. So all of these decisions are being made without anyone who actually lives on the island of Manhattan, on the Transit Mobility Review Board. Nevertheless, there's not been an opportunity for public comment at these hearings. The public has been invited to listen or to attend, but not an opportunity to speak. So if all of these recommendations are going to the Tri-Borough Bridge and Tunnel Authority, is that where they're going next, or the MTA? How is it working, Craig?
Right.
Then where is the opportunity for the public to have any kind of say in this at all?
Right. And according to the process that's laid out, there will be public hearings afterwards, and there may or may not, and we certainly hope there are. And in the past, we had heard that perhaps there would be engagement with community boards. In fact, tonight, Community Board 3 in Lower Manhattan is having a congestion pricing meeting, and apparently there is actually going to be someone from the MTA there, which I would hope that we can get someone at one of our meetings to be able to discuss that. But I guess we'll learn that process as it evolves. But we're certainly going to press to have a meeting in which we have someone from the MTA being able to hear from our constituents here in Community District 8.
And it would be helpful if our elected officials were also here to hear from the constituents, but they haven't been coming either.
Absolutely. Well, a few came a few meetings ago, and we'll see if anyone shows up tonight, although I don't see anyone as of yet. All right. Other things that came out of that TMRB meeting. Let me just pull up my list.
While you're doing that, what they took very sharp pains to note was that for every exemption or discount, there would be a concomitant increase in the basic toll. So they actually did the math for a discount, which is what New Jersey's been asking for or the Port Authority, on all of the Port Authority entrances to Manhattan, discounts for varying people or interests. And each one, they said that would be an extra 25 cents, an extra 75 cents, an extra $2, whatever it was, so that there was a direct way to link the discounts or exemptions with increases in tolls for everyone else.
Right. So essentially, I'm sure everyone is familiar with the $9 to $23 toll range that was originally included in the environmental assessment. And as I think I had been saying all along, the $23 was always going to be basically out there for messaging and to show that it could be worse. But people took that seriously, and I think there was a lot of outrage over the idea of $23. So at this last meeting, especially in the concern was from those who lived in outside the districts who are paying tolls already. So one of the things that the TMRB said at this last meeting is that they're looking at possible credits ranging from $4 to $7 for drivers entering the Central District Business District during the city's 4 tunnels, depending on the entry points. So we'll have to see how that plays out. And again, with this whole New Jersey issue, it is entirely possible that part of the negotiation also is whether there will be offsets for people coming in, and what the offset could be for those coming in from New Jersey as well. So I guess we will see how that plays out.
We will be paying the burden of an additional tax if that comes to pass, because it will certainly increase the base toll for drivers of those of us who live in the city, as well as trucks, box trucks and larger trucks, which will be treated differently.
Well, though actually, as I'm reading this though, if it is if the credits would be for the 4 tunnels below 60th Street, that is basically that it would have to include the Lincoln and Holland tunnels, because the other 2 tunnels are the Queens Midtown Tunnel and the Brooklyn Battery or Hugh L. Carey Tunnel. Because remember, the idea is that the bridges themselves aren't being tolled. So the Brooklyn Bridge, Manhattan Bridge, and Williamsburg Bridge, along with the Queensboro Bridge, are not being tolled themselves, but are essentially, in most instances, going to result in people who cross them being tolled. But anyway, going back to the TMRB, so they are going to also looking at a tiered approach for tolling for hire vehicles with relatively low fees that they were discussing. So depending on the type of taxis or for hire vehicles, it would either be between $1 and $1.50, or app-based drivers seeing the rates of about $1.50 to $2. And the idea is that this would be passed on to passengers, because the for hire vehicles, one of the promises that was made to them is that they would be only tolled once a day for the vehicles crossing.
My understanding from listening to one of those meetings is, well, first of all, we already pay a $2.50 toll additional surcharge for congestion pricing. And it says so on the taxi bill, as we all know, for south of 96th Street or whatever it is on the west side. So this would be in addition to that, from which they've raised, I think I heard $400 million, but that's besides the point. The other thing that I heard is that the for hire vehicle companies, actual companies, not the drivers, the companies of Uber and Lyft, will not be paying anything at all to congestion pricing. It will be the drivers and it will be the passengers, but not the companies. So just putting that out there, because perhaps it may be interpreted as not really being fair.
Well, and again, we still just don't know yet, because the final details haven't been announced yet, the final proposal by the Traffic Mobility Review Board. I was alluding to overnight discounts. So the TMRB is talking about the possibility of a 50% nighttime discount for passengers. And then in the transition zone, so that would mean from 8 to 10 p.m. and between 5 and 6 a.m., perhaps a 25% discount that they were looking at. And then they were also looking at increasing the discounts that would be provided to those who qualify as low-income drivers, from the mandated 25% after the first 10 trips to 50%. So if you recall, the law required that drivers with annual incomes under $60,000 would be able to receive discounts, and that was determined to be after the first 10 trips that they would receive 25%. First 10 trips in a month, that they would receive a 25% discount. So TMRB is looking at increasing that as well. They were also discussing exemptions for commuter buses and specialized government vehicles. And by specialized government vehicles, I believe they are alluding to things like sanitation trucks and such, and not just, and perhaps police, fire, those types of official vehicles that serve actual functions, rather than other cars that may not be essential vehicles that are known to add to the congestion in the central business district and across Manhattan. So I'm not sure what that means. I guess that'll also be specified.
I have a question about that. So let's say an assistant to some deputy borough president is driving around doing their responsibilities because they have responsibility for the entire borough, and they go into the zone and they're assessed a fee. They're going to get reimbursed by the borough president's office because they're on official business and it's not coming out of their own pocket. So how does it work with the budget of the city? When the city gives the MTA money, does it give the MTA money?
The city contributes to the MTA, yes.
Okay. So they contribute out of the budget, but will that budgetary number be reduced by whatever the reimbursements are for the government cars going into and out of the zone? And if it is coming out of the budget, then it's kind of a net wash, right? Or a wash or net zero for the MTA, because whatever money is in the budget is now reduced by whatever money they're paying in the car. So I'm not really understanding the benefit to the MTA of that at all. And therefore, I don't really understand the benefit to the public, because again, we will be paying for this one way or another. It just seems like a lot. The infrastructure, taking it down, putting it up. We have those huge gantries across Madison Avenue and other northbound avenues that may have to come down. They're paying hundreds of millions of dollars to the entity in Tennessee, I think it is, that is supervising all of this. So I'm just not really understanding the math here.
All right, with all due respect, I think we're deviating from what the TMRB was suggesting. I think, and you're asking fair questions, but I think that's maybe we should just hold those for a moment. And actually, I'm just about done. And then the last thing that they are also looking at now is in terms of toll rates, essentially they're looking at double toll rates for box trucks and triple rates for larger trucks as the way in which they're looking to come up with the math, if you will, because as Alita described before, the TMRB and the staff that's assisting it has described this as sort of like a Rubik's Cube, that they have to find the correct equation, because at the end of the day, the program is supposed to generate $1 billion annually to allow for a $15 million in bonding to support MTA capital projects. So they have to make the math work at the end of the day, and that's really what the challenge is and what the Traffic Mobility Review Board is struggling with. So that's where we are right now. And as I said, there may very well be action taken at the MTA board meetings. The committee meetings take place on the Monday after Thanksgiving, that's the 27th, and then the full board would vote on anything on the 29th. And for anyone who wishes to see that any of the board packages as they're published, just check the MTA board page under the transparency section of the MTA website, and you may be able to get a preview of something if it is posted there beforehand. So
I have another question, which I've asked, but I don't understand why I haven't, why my reasoning is not necessarily accurate, which is we have to, there's now a higher interest rate, right? The Fed's interest rates a lot. Interest on T-bills, interest on municipal bonds are 4 or 5%. So therefore, the interest on whatever bonds the MTA is issuing to support the $15 billion for capital improvements will have to be paid for with higher interest. Does that affect what the MTA will have to raise every year? Instead of $1 billion when interest rates were 2%, now it will be a lot more because interest rates are higher? Or am I just wrong about this? Because I'm not an economist.
No, I don't know that I can answer that either, or give an educated answer there.
Okay, so
I don't know enough about how the bond market works to know whether that's going to affect things over the long term or not.
Well, I know if they're only paying 2% interest, they're not going to sell any bonds when everything else is paying much more than that. So there you go. But I guess, are we ready to open it up for any kind of discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
So if anyone from the public wishes to speak, again, you want to go to the reactions button on the bottom of your screen and use then the raise hand function. So I will give anyone who wishes to speak a moment to do so. And we do have a hand up. It is Lauren Kaufman. So if we can unmute Lauren, please. And
if
Freddie, go on. You're going to say what I'm going to say.
Thanks. I was just going to ask Laura, and I'm probably reading your mind. If you could just identify where you live, please. Thank
Yeah,
you.
hi. I live on 79th and 2nd, and I'm so disgusted by this whole congestion pricing. It's total discrimination against all of us who live here and people who come in. But as a car owner who pays a gross premium to park my car in this city and pay tax on that, I am unable to leave my own neighborhood without getting charged to get out of the city unless I go north to the GW, which is a hot mess as it is, which I drive to family in New Jersey all the time, and it takes me a good hour because of the construction and the broken roadways. And now you're going to have even more people trying to avert the city and go around on the West Side Highway and the Harlem River Drive. And it just doesn't make any sense. And I can't take the Queensboro Bridge without getting charged to go down 2nd Avenue or, even around York. So, I mean, I'm not able to leave my driveway. Like if I lived in a town, you can't leave your own block. So as a resident, I mean, there has to be an exemption for those of us who own cars. I mean, it seems absolutely crazy to me to not even let me out, get me out. Do you know if there's any discussion about an exemption for us or those of us who register for parking exemption or any tax exemptions and stuff?
So I could try to answer that. So but as I was referring to with the math, the equation has always been predicated on fewer exemptions. And those who are arguing for any resident discounts, if you will, are generally more arguing for those who live within the congestion zone itself. And that may be part of the reason why the Traffic Mobility Review Board is now looking at only tolling in for those vehicles entering the zone instead of leaving the zone. Because anyone who lives within the zone actually, unless you were to hit a gantry, you were not going to be charged. So it was really for those who are crossing that 60th Street boundary or leaving the, or actually it was just for those who are crossing the 60th Street boundary, unless you were, or hitting a gantry as you were approaching an exit to Manhattan. So there was always the exception written into the law for those vehicles who were never entering the internal roadway network. But that was really I think why the mobility board was looking at changing that rule. How it affects our district, however, I don't think the intent was ever to provide any discounts for people who live north of the zone, because the idea was that they were going to it was always to try to deter people who are living outside of the zone from driving into the zone. So I know it's not what you want to hear, but of all the things that they were looking at, that is probably one of the least likely outcomes that is going to occur, because there are other discounts that I think would view as much more higher priority than anything involving north of the 60th Street boundary. That's just
But I can't even leave. Like, I can't leave. I can't get on the Queensboro Bridge without getting charged.
Correct.
I can't do an alternate route to go to the Lincoln Tunnel to get out. I can only use the highways that are going to be beyond congested. So, I mean, the whole thing makes zero sense. And it's adverse to those of us who to leave my own neighborhood.
And with all due respect, that's part of what the goal is. It's to deter people to drive into the zone.
But that's ridiculous. I'm sorry, but I pay a lot of money to the city, and I own a car. I have the privilege of owning a car. But to tell me that I need to pay $25 to go drive to cross the Queensboro Bridge is insane. It's like not literally being able to leave your town.
There have been a lot of objections, but what might help not to appreciate and not to like, but to understand what this is about, is that it is a revenue producing mechanism. And the MTA says its first priority is to raise revenue. So effects on congestion, effects on the environment are secondary to the idea that they are raising funds. Therefore, anything that diminishes their ability to raise funds without a really strong basis is something that they are probably not going to entertain, because that will raise the rate for everybody else and it will decrease the amount of money that by law they're supposed to be getting. So it's not, the idea is not the congestion so much as it is to raise money.
Yeah, I have to disagree
But
with
as
that.
residents of this city, but I mean, we live in this city. We pay more taxes than anyone else, and it's. I mean, we're getting charged every which way. You get in a taxi, you get charged. I just got charged $250 coming back in a taxi from JFK under congestion pricing. It's just like, where's the end of it? So
yeah, we have had plenty of these meetings, and we have plenty of people who agree with you and have raised the same issues and concerns that you have. I do have to disagree with Alita. The MTA has always been very clear that yes, it is meant to be a revenue producing program, but it is also meant to be addressing the congestion issues with the goals of allowing for vehicular speeds within the zone to increase and to allow buses to operate better. So I just want to make that clear that
that would make sense, except that the MTA says its priority is to raise money, and lifting a cap on electric lifts and Ubers, which I believe is either under consideration or a done deal by the administration. What does that say about congestion? It's just going to increase congestion. And if we wanted to look at what was done in other cities, which they are always happy to compare, no city is the same. And it's also really hard to predict. I'm just quoting from the MTA's own documents about what its priority is. I know that there will be an effect on congestion, but maybe not as much as everyone anticipates. I also know that tall buildings, even demolition, are responsible for the bulk of environmental emissions, and that things move. And so that's why the MTA is paying an awful lot of money in the South Bronx to reduce what they expect will be increased emissions from increased traffic on the already heavily congested Cross Bronx Expressway. And that's why New Jersey is up in arms, and we'll have to see what happens with the MTA and how they resolve all of this. I'd also like to note, which has nothing to do with any of this, is that the Port Authority doesn't like the whole proposal because they won't allow the gantries on Port Authority land, I understand. And so they are now in Hell's Kitchen in residential community rather than on Port Authority property by the Lincoln Tunnel. So that's enough about that. I think the next person is, and thank you very much, Lauren, for coming to the meeting and for expressing yourself. And I'm sorry our answer is so frustrating. We've tried to have input into the congestion pricing plans. We've written resolutions, we've presented them, but we haven't had a lot of traction with them. So the next person from the public, it looks like, is JG. If you could identify your name as well as your address, please, or location. Thank you. I think you're still muted, maybe.
While JG is unmuting,
Okay.
the lifting of the cap was actually done by New York City. That's not that was not an MTA decision.
But that will also have an effect on congestion because Revel is already all electric vehicles, and what will stop Lyft and Uber drivers? It's just, it will increase congestion, even though it will certainly have not increase emissions. Anyway, we could debate this among ourselves. Craig and I have different points of view, which is good for the committee, I think. Okay, JG, please. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Jana Goldenberg. I live on 66th Street and 2nd Avenue. And I have gotten in touch with a lot of our elected officials, and I pretty much got like the same, answers, which was nothing. So, they say congestion pricing, this is supposed to like bring less cars into the city. And this was their whole debate about why they wanted to do it. Now, my dog has almost got hit by a car, maybe 2 or 3 times, because the traffic down on 2nd Avenue is unbelievable. Now, when the president is in town or some high official, they'll have traffic, cops at these corners. But on a normal, regular day, they don't. So everybody is going down 2nd Avenue to get to the 59th Street Bridge. My concern is people that are going to want to avoid 60th and below, they're going to bring the traffic up now onto the Upper East Side. Now, I was told that there's no congestion pricing on the FDR, on the Harlem, all the highways and stuff. So my concern is, what is traffic going to be like when people are going to try to avoid the $25 fee? The second thing is, I also own a car in the city, okay? And I get a parking tax exemption. Now, why can't we, as getting parking exemptions, why aren't we getting the same thing when it comes to this? And going back to what the woman said before, it's my right to have a car in the city. I live here. It's very expensive to live here. People are leaving left and right because of all these high prices. How are they going to want to keep us all here with all these little things when they're not considering all the residents that live here on the Upper East Side?
I don't have an answer for that. I know that we raised the idea that there will likely be more congestion at the northern boundary of the zone, which is the southern boundary of CB8. CB7 on the west side has also had some concerns about it, but it is something that they don't believe will, and I'm sure Craig could quote this much better with actual details. They just don't believe that it will have that big, if at all, a negative effect on the parking situation and on the streets on the Upper East Side.
Right.
Or
So
around the zone.
the environmental assessment did an in-depth review of every neighborhood that would be potentially impacted by congestion pricing, and all of the data and analysis and modeling that they performed showed that the overall amount of traffic in Community District 8 and in the lower 60s would not significantly increase, and in many cases would be likely to decrease, and that and in terms of anyone who may be concerned about vehicles that are going to drive and try to park near the toll zone and then take a subway or walk across the border, that is also unlikely to occur to a large degree as well, because congestion pricing as a policy is a deterrence to driving, and therefore there are going to be people who will transition to public transportation as a substitute to driving once congestion pricing is in effect.
Well, obviously, nobody has stood on 2nd Avenue at rush hour, because if somebody would stand out there, they would see what is going on. You can't get through. So if you're coming down from 1st Avenue, you're going west on 66th Street, it could take you 3, 4, 5 lights to get across 2nd Avenue to go across to the west side. So what I don't understand is, I don't know who's doing these surveys. I don't know who's making all this stuff. I just think that somebody has not done the major work, because yes, there's going to be less parking here because people are going to start parking up here and take public transportation to avoid the $25. The FDR is going to be even more crowded than it already is. The Triborough Bridge is going to be more crowded. So the thing is, I don't know who's doing these surveys and not asking us, the public that live here, and to tell them what our concerns are. Because like I said, I live right at the corner. I see what goes on here every single day. 2nd Avenue is a mess. Coming from, it could be, you get a little lull at like maybe 11, 12 o'clock. But after that, it's bumper to bumper till 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. So I don't know who's doing these surveys and researching, because again, there's a lot of people on here. They probably have the same kind of concerns about where they live. And somebody should be asking us, like the MTA, what our concerns are, especially that we live here.
As I said, the purpose of this plan is to, at least one of the main purposes is to reduce congestion. And the reality is that all the data and the extensive traffic modeling that was done shows that and they tested different scenarios with different toll rates, that the benefits outside of the district would outside of the toll zone would exceed any of the potential adverse impacts, if you will. And because they found that there would be no significant impacts within our district. And if you use the assumption that you're going to see fewer vehicles approaching the toll zone because they're now looking to pay the toll zone, they're going to have to cross it when they're going to have to cross the toll zone when they are approaching and entering the bridge. So you would think that there will be fewer people who will be choosing to do that, and that should have a positive benefit on traffic there. And then, as I said earlier, in terms of what the MTA is looking at and what the law was seeking to do with this policy is they were looking at this from a citywide perspective, and they were looking at the ability to raise the revenues and to increase and to reduce congestion and improve air quality within the congestion district. And in order to do so, with any type of major transportation project, there are always going to be winners or losers. And those who live in this district and who own cars and are going to have to pay more are the proverbial losers in this scenario. And that's just
I just have one more.
That's just the fact, and I'm not. If you know what I mean.
One more thing, and then I'll let somebody else speak. So I run a very large aviation organization called Plain Sense, and something that just struck me is what you said when you said no significant impact. The FAA has told us 5 million times that there's no significant impact. So the thing is, you know, we let them get away with it when we all know there is going to be significant impact. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you. We don't know. Nobody knows what's going to happen because I don't think you can predict people's behavior in exactly this scenario. We know London bought buses. We know London created parking spaces. New York City has not done that. Their idea of what a transportation desert and a reasonable commute are may differ from your idea and my idea. When they told the Henry Hudson Bridge, people took the Broadway Bridge because it was free. We don't really know what's going to happen. But what we did ask for, and we'll see whether they pay any attention, is a review, a periodic, I don't remember what we asked for, Craig, the initial review of what the impact is on our community and whether it is actually doing what they intended it to do. So hopefully there will be some eyes on it, as they say, and we will have some more information. But I find it really hard and almost ridiculous to say it will or won't affect these particular streets or this particular type of parking or this particular amount of congestion, because it is very hard, if not impossible, to predict. But thank you very much for coming and for giving us your thoughts. I'd ask for the patience of Judy Schneider and Robin, because there's some more members of the public. If we could go to Todd Stein and then Leah. And once again, Todd, we have your name, but address, and Leah, name and address, please. Thank you.
I am driving right now, so I apologize. But yeah, I'm in the same boat as both of the last two speakers at 68th and 2nd. And it does seem really ridiculous that I won't be able to get out of, you know, my block. I also have family that's, you know, out of town. And, you know, I use my car if I want to go to visit other areas of the city, which is why, you know, the city is so great. We have so much that it offers. And if I'm in my car or, you know, I'm still being charged. And I think that the last two people said it well. Also, 3rd Avenue created the bike lane, which took away parking just right on my street even. And the bikes, and you know, we know are going every direction, and we just made the street smaller, and they don't abide by the rules at all. So I just think it's really silly that we haven't really identified how it affects us as car owners. You know, with my mother in a wheelchair, I need to have the car. It's just disappointing. And being a native of this particular city, and in particular, the 68th Street. So it's just very, very troublesome hearing what you guys have shared too. You know, that, oh, there's winners and losers, and we're the losers. That's just not cool.
That's not necessarily our point of view, but that may be how
what was said, I guess.
Right.
I think Greg said that.
The proverbial winners and losers, there are always, with any project, there are always going to be those who are going to not come out on top, if you will.
It's not about coming out on top, Craig. It's a coming out, you know, in a way that makes this a system that works for those that are paying a lot of money to have a car, insurance, and we need it. I need it because my family doesn't live in the city. They live in Westchester. They live in other areas, and I'd like to be able to see them and not have to pay an Uber $150 to go up on Thanksgiving to Chappaqua. I mean, you know, it's just, it's not, your phrasing was exactly what it was. There's winners and losers, and that's just not cool. And it should have been identified further. And I hope that it is, because it's really, I hate to say, crappy.
No, I sympathize with where you're coming from. On the flip side, there are going to be those who don't own cars, who are reliant on public transportation, are the ones who are going to at some point benefit from faster buses.
Please let Craig.
I rely on public transportation as well, but I also have to choose to use a car at times.
No, right, and I'm not casting aspersions on that, or that I'm not making any statements.
I'm assuming you don't own a car and it's not affecting you. Am I wrong?
Wait, guys. We need to have a productive conversation and see if there's a way to lead to a resolution and some way to potentially have some input. Arguing over who might have a car or who doesn't, or who uses it or who doesn't, is not going to lead in that direction. I understand your frustration, Todd, the frustration of Lauren, and the frustration of JG, or GJ. I'm bad at names.
JG.
But thank you, but there's not much that, if there's nothing we could really do about it now. We would like to have input into the financial direction of this or any other direction, but it's a state decision. Call your state elected officials and tell them that you are unhappy, because they have far more power about this than we do. We express our opinion, we create and send resolutions, we invite our elected officials, we invite other people from the state who are responsible, but they're not here. So if you are concerned, and you are, call your state elected officials, come to our meetings, let's create resolutions so that we're on record as representing the voice of the community. But I understand, Craig does as well, and the community board, that there is a lot of frustration from many constituents, many members of the community. I don't have a better answer. I wish I did, but we just don't.
Well, it would be great to hear what your ideas are of resolution then.
Well, let's hear from the rest of the board. I mean, the board members who are here, who have their hands raised.
Yeah, that would be great.
And maybe there's something. And I also see someone from Rebecca Seawright's office is here, a representative. So we'd like to hear from him too. Should we go to Rebecca's staff member, Craig, or just continue with the public?
No, I'm happy to allow Rebecca's staff member to speak.
So Kevin, if you could unmute Harley Needitz, please, from Assembly Member Seawright.
Oh yeah, Neiditz. Yes. Well, first,
Sorry.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Craig and Lead. I just want to clarify, there is representation from Assemblymember Seawright's office here. That is myself. So I do want people here to know that there is someone they can, raise their concerns with. And I don't want people to think that our office is not listening and that we do not attend these meetings or take them seriously, because we've been attending as many of these as we can. I do want to note that. Oh, thank you. I do want to note that Assemblymember Seawright contact Richard Davey several times, raising her opinion that there should be discounts for people with disabilities, people of low income, senior citizens. So this is something we're pushing for. We also do recognize, like Craig mentioned, the equation, the Rubik's Cube, that the more discounts you impose, the more the higher basic tolls are going to be for everybody else. So this certainly is we understand that this is a complex matter too, but I just want to reiterate, we are in support of very essential exemptions for people that would make a difference.
Well, I have some ideas about replacements for the revenue with other sources, but I guess no one's particularly interested in that. Thank you so much for coming, Harley, and please thank Assemblymember Seawright for asking you to come on her behalf, because we do
Yes.
think it's important to have our elected officials hear what the community has to say. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We go back to the public, I think, with Leah and then Raquel.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I came across the 59th Street Bridge inbound a couple hours ago, and it's still under construction. My plan for elder care on Long Island after congestion pricing is to take the Triborough out and the upper deck of the 59th Street back. But as I said, it is under construction. What is the status of the construction, and is it still going to be under construction when this starts in the spring?
But before Craig answers that, Leah, could you just give us your full name and your location?
Oh, yeah,
please?
sorry. It's Leah Hanlon, East 79th.
Thank you. Craig, if you have an answer for that. Craig is also on the Transportation Committee, so he's very familiar with all of this.
Alita, Craig hopped off the call, so
Oh.
he's not currently in the call right now.
Okay, so then I don't have an answer for that, Leah. I don't know, but maybe Kevin, if you could quickly look and see if there's a time frame for the completion of construction on the 59th Street Bridge. I would just guess that it will still be ongoing even when congestion pricing is kicks in as it's supposed to in the spring, because repairs take longer. It's difficult. But thank you. I we'll see if Kevin could come up with an answer right now. Thank you.
Okay.
And then Raquel?
Me. Hello?
Hi. You're unmuted. If you could just give us your location. Your name is Raquel Ortiz, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm on 101st Lexington and Park. I'm trying to see a picture here. Anyway, yes. 101st Lexington and Park. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. One of my concerns in the neighborhood, it's been for a while, when they put up, it's two things. When they have restaurants, the restaurant, it's fine that they have that extra part of the restaurant on the sidewalk, but what about the one that's on the street that is taking up 3 or 4 parking spaces? Like we should, I mean, I just wanted to bring that up if that has not come out before. I'm sure it has. But
it has in a different committee. This committee is just about congestion pricing, but Community Board 8 has a transportation committee, and their meeting a couple of weeks ago had primarily, or maybe only, to do with the restaurant sheds and comments, because the city is working on, or the Department of Transportation, who will be in charge, is working on rules for that. So I think there was I think a resolution, I was at that meeting, I think a resolution passed about that, which you could find on the CB8 website, but that is, there's a different committee that's responsible for that. We're just handling the issues related to congestion pricing.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, though. Thank you. Okay, if there's no one else from the public, and you're still free to raise your hands, will Judy Schneider and then Robin Salikson, please.
Hi, Alita and Craig. Thanks for keep going on this. I'll ask my same question. Craig mentioned in the beginning of his conversation that Julie Menon and some of the other leaders met on 60th Street. Did anyone have a discussion about the upper level of the 59th Street Bridge? Because as many of our speakers have said, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Avenue, the traffic has been terrible, and people will be taking that now into the city because they won't have to pay a toll if they come in that way. And if they're not going down. So I still think that's an important issue that we have to get to the electeds and to the committee.
Don't we have a resolution about that, asking that the bridge be tolled for that reason? And that was, I think, voted on and approved by the board, but and Rebecca Seawright's staff is here. Other than that, I I don't have any other answers about how to make anyone listen to us or acknowledge what the concerns and considerations are. But we are all really familiar with the issues on the bridge and your point. And I know that you are persistent, Judy, and kudos for that. It's I don't have any answers.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if there's any way to get to the mobility committee and just hit home on that, but it really is, the low 60s has real traffic problems, as our prior speakers have mentioned, and this isn't going to help any. I mean,
No, I think you may be right about that. Kevin, maybe you can answer Judy on to whom those resolutions are sent. I know we asked for them to be sent as broadly as possible. Do you know if it does go to the TRMB?
And Kevin, before you answer that, I think they're going to be working on the upper level of the bridge for at least another year. For the other speaker who asked about when the bridge would be completed, I think Leah asked that question. Okay, they're behind schedule because they couldn't get the steel. Not surprising.
Yeah, sorry, I'm back. I think Judy probably knows as much, if not more so, being a neighbor of the 59th Street Bridge than me, about what the status is. My understanding is that the entire project has been delayed for various reasons. I mean, if you see what they're doing, they're still nowhere near done. So I guess it's a race to the finish as far as congestion pricing versus when the bridge is going to be completed. I did hear that question. I was trying to listen as I was trying to get back online. Judy, if you were asking about the resolution regarding tolling the bridge, yes, we did pass that resolution and that was sent out. I do have it on good authority that the MTA is reading our resolutions. I have spoken to someone relatively high up who's on a board that I am on, who has acknowledged that he is very familiar with our resolutions. So they do see it. I don't know if that means that there is any likelihood that anyone will take any action or not, but they are very much aware of what we have issued in terms of our resolutions in the past.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see a couple of more members of the public. If I could ask for the indulgence, Robin, are you okay with that? Thank you. So let's go to Craig, who for a moment I thought maybe Craig later trying to get back on, but clearly is not. And then Evelyn David. Craig, if you could give us your full name and location, please.
Craig Cohen, I'm on Lexington in the 70s. I just have a quick question. I noticed when they put those cameras or sensors up, whatever they are, on 60th to 61st Street, they're pointed in they're pointed downtown and uptown. Did you notice that? Have you seen them?
Yes. Yes, I saw it on Madison that they're pointed uptown.
Then why would that be?
That is because the original plan, and until something changes, it is still the plan that anyone who would either be entering or leaving the zone would be subject to it. So that is the mechanism for which anyone who perhaps lives below 60th Street and then was leaving the congestion zone northward and coming through our district or the Upper West Side, that they would be told upon exiting if that was the first time they were crossing the zone in any given day.
So what if they were just in the zone all day? Like what if they lived on 50th and Lex or 3rd or whatever it might be? They don't get a toll?
Correct. If you live within the zone and drive within the zone, you would not be tolled. You're only tolled for crossing the toll zone boundary, which means that you're crossing north of 60th Street or you're exiting via one of the crossings south of 60th Street.
So just to clarify that in my head, so if you live all around there, you can drive all around downtown and not get a toll. And then you can live all around uptown and not get a toll. But if you go across the two, either direction, you're going to get a toll.
Right. Think of it like when you cross a bridge and you're told for crossing that bridge or a tunnel.
No, but I'm not. No. That doesn't make any sense, because if you're crossing the bridge, you're entering the city or you're leaving the city. I'm still missing the point of why that's an issue to toll somebody for, like tolls or penalties. So I'm missing what the purpose of that would be, that crossing that zone incurs a penalty. Why is that?
They don't see it as a penalty. They see it as a revenue producer and as a mechanism to reduce congestion and reduce environmental emissions.
So they just want to divide the city up between uptown and downtown, sort of like the Cross Bronx Expressway or 278 or at Brooklyn Queens Expressway from.
Well, the reality was that it was always based off of, remember, the formal name of this program is the Central Business District Tolling Program. So they defined in the state law that the Central Business District is below 60th Street. So, I mean, typically Manhattan, the Midtown has been from whatever points on the southern side.
You're saying, in other words, Greenwich Village is that?
Whatever.
Greenwich Village is that also?
There have been discussions regarding that as well. So they just decided, for simplicity purposes, quite possibly, that they would call everything below 60th Street there. So that way you're capturing both Midtown and Lower Manhattan. And really that a lot of the congestion is a result of where the crossings are. But for people who are coming from the north and then trying to drive into Midtown or points below there, the idea is, as I said, it's like when you cross a bridge, that if you cross a certain, picture this as an artificial,
I understand that.
imaginary waterway, if you will, at 60th Street, and then you're essentially being told to cross that. That's
now
really,
just, you're saying they, who's they?
well, that was the state law. And
right, but who's they? Whose plan was this? Like, why is this even here? We've been living our lives all along with no problem, and then all of a sudden, all these bus lanes. There's one lane on Lexington Avenue that you can drive in. You can't drive in that bus lane at night when there's no one on the street. Yes. Which causes more traffic for no reason. The one on Fifth Avenue, fine. The buses go down, but in the evening, you can drive wherever you want to. And the same third, I mean, they just, like some GJ or J said, look, they've added that now bike lane to tie up traffic on Third Avenue all the time. And, it's one thing where they're just going after drivers. They're not going after these new bikes that have to charge, cause fires and all that other stuff. It just isn't right. And somebody from the community board, maybe if they're going to do this, we could have a peaceful protest and cover the cameras. As they do.
We are not going to encourage that here. I think we should move on.
No, but it would be nice if we encouraged you to step up and did something as a peaceful protest. We
as a board have not actually provided formal support or opposition to this, and we have made a conscious decision at this point, after various efforts to do so, that was not going to be a strategy that was going to get us anywhere. And to be perfectly honest, there are many people who are on this board and who live within this community that do support this program. So we have to try to all figure out how we're going to work together, and if this is inevitable and going to happen, how to do our best to influence the decisions that are made to allow it to have the least amount of impact, if you will, for those who are going to be adversely impacted by it. But at the same time, there are those who are supportive of it for different reasons, because of the benefits that it could bring to.
Could you give me one of those benefits? Just one.
It's supposed to be both a mechanism that will help reduce the amount of traffic and reduce congestion and improve air quality, and provide a revenue source to help support funding for the MTA, because all of it would go to the capital fund to help support projects such as accessibility improvements, signal upgrades, and all the things that are critical to the MTA. So,
okay, we're taking that into account. That's fine. Haley, I think it is, from the Assemblywoman's office. Is that who's here?
Harley, I believe.
Harley. Sorry, Harley. For Harley to take this back with you. The only thing I could say on that, it's not that the MTA theoretically would be the thing that would need to be improved. It's the police on the MTA that would be improved. When Giuliani and Bloomberg were mayors, people were taking the subway freely to like 1 a.m, 2 a.m, which wasn't available when I was growing up here, that you couldn't go on once it got dark. So people were readily taking these subways. They were taking the buses. They were filled at night. It was amazing. It was a total turnaround from the entire life that I grew up here. And now people are afraid to go on the subway. So if you took that money and put some of it to policing on those subways, then people might not mind taking the subway at night to drive around, or they might not mind taking the subway not during rush hour when you have all these lunatics on there. So
Well,
that might be a thing to help out this whole situation and put people's minds at ease.
There are a lot of things that the MTA could do with the money, but I don't think hiring additional police or a capital project. I don't know, Craig, correct me if I'm wrong. So that's not something that the money could be used for if they were going.
I know, but it would be nice if they adjusted the law and said, yeah, let's put some extra cops on the subway.
Well,
just letting Harley know.
And appreciate that. And that's why we ask our elected officials to be here so that they could listen to and potentially be responsive to what members of the public and members of the community board are saying. So thank you for coming and for expressing
on the next one.
Expressing that viewpoint. Evelyn David, Kevin, if you could unmute her, please. And thank you, Craig.
Hi, good evening, everybody. It's Evelyn David on Lexington Avenue, who lives right near the zone 60th. Okay, so we are looking at the nightmare getting closer and closer. And to be really perfectly frank, everybody's talking about how anybody in this area that I know of that's got a car, you need to know this, are not going to be driving in. They are not going to be driving in. They're going to be taking the subway in. Yay! So what does that mean for the MTA and their $1 billion of all the cars coming in? They're not going to get their money. Oh, now what happens? Well, don't ask me. Okay, don't ask me. The whole thing is a complete boondoggle. Anyway, having said all of this stuff with the sword hanging over us, any mention, and please, somebody try to make a resolution, try to start talking seriously about parking passes, okay, for us that live near the zone, in CB8, whatever creative idea you can come up with, that would just be so wonderful. It would just counteract all this negativity and wanting to run away from the city, okay? It would just give us a little bit of something. The other thing is, I wonder if once they come up with their hours, if CB8 could put out the time zones where we would have a reduction in fees of going in or coming out. Okay, I read something from Senator Kruger's office, and it was so confusing. By the end of it, I couldn't even make a chart. Okay, so if you could just, once this comes out, hopefully, you know what, I'm hoping it'll never come out. Actually, I'm hoping and praying it never comes out. There is no diminution of, the air quality will be passed up to here. We'll get it. Okay, and if you don't think we're going to get it, we are. It won't, maybe they're not going to go downtown, they'll just be up here. So, $20 million to the Bronx to take care of pollution problems does not say that the pollution is going to get any better. It's just going to get shifted. And it's not fair to the people in the Bronx and those poor little kids that I teach all day long with all their asthma problems that come from all over the place. It is just totally not fair. It's like diverting water source that is polluted. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about that. So parking passes, that would just be incredibly wonderful if the CB8 could start to tout that, think of creative ways to get us like a little bit of something, a little bit of help here. Life isn't getting any cheaper. It's ridiculously more expensive, as you already know. So, but anyway, thank you very much for all the work that you are all doing. And, let's just see how this all comes out. But if in the end, CB8 could put out a really good chart, very simply explaining the hours coming in, when there's a reduction, that would be fantastic. And I have a question, actually. On weekends, will there be any reduction? Or will it just be strictly time? Or do you not know yet? Thank you very much.
All to be determined by the Traffic Mobility Review Board. So the specific hours in which the discounts will be
Hello?
Sorry, can you hear me? I thought it got
Now.
cut off.
Yes, now I can. Yeah.
All right. The specific hours of the discounts in the evenings and overnights, and whether they will be in place in weekends, are all going to be determined by the Traffic Mobility Review Board. So once that is out, I'm sure at a future meeting I will be providing an outline of the parameters
Right.
of what the plan is.
Okay.
In terms of what you're referring to.
Well, while Craig
Oh,
is
you're-
frozen, I'll just say that a chart,
Yep.
something that's really clear and very visual, and then posting it on the website and e-blasting it out, I think would be really useful. I
Yes.
like the idea of a
Yes.
visual a summary of it. Thank you. Okay, not
Okay.
seeing
What about
anyone-
parking passes?
and
Anything?
we have to wait for someone else, I think, to take that up. So, but thank you, Evelyn. I know it's come up
Oh,
before, the
okay.
idea of residential parking. And
Yeah.
seeing, oh, sorry, that cut you off again, probably.
No, it's coming and going. It's okay. I'm still listening.
Okay, is there anything else you'd like to add, Evelyn?
No, I don't, not at this time. Thank you very much. Thank you
Okay,
very
thank
much.
you. Okay, now to the board, seeing no other members of the public. Robin and then John. Thank you for your patience, guys.
Wait. Before you go, I'm sorry, I'm back.
Sure.
My computer, Zoom keeps crashing on me. Just to finish my thought process before, in terms of what Evelyn was saying in parking passes, I'm putting on my other hat for a second and speaking for the Transportation Committee. We did have a discussion regarding residential parking passes a month or two ago, and we agreed that we would have additional discussion, and I'm looking to try to bring in people who are part of cities that have implemented them so we could discuss it further. It is a complicated subject, but at least taking the pulse of the Transportation Committee, there was interest in at least discussing this further, and we will be doing so. So as it relates to how we move together in this task force, I again just caution just jumping to a conclusion that would solve the issues, because I don't know that it would. But it's worth trying to look into that further, and that's what we're going to do. I'm sorry, Robin, please go ahead. I just wanted to make sure I got that in there and was responsive to people.
Apology not necessary, Craig. Alita and Craig, the prior questioner asked the question that I was going to ask, and sounds like Craig answered it, which was, are the rates going to be ameliorated in any way on the weekends? Is there talk of that?
Yeah.
And you answered it. You given a satisfactory answer. So.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, we just don't know. That's come up, the amount of reduction, the hours, the idea of the overnight workers. As Craig mentioned, there are a lot of, even for reductions overnight and even in a shoulder season kind of sense, and on weekends, we just don't know what they're going to want to implement.
Okay, thank you.
Robin. John?
Thank you. If I understood Craig correctly earlier, he said that the TMRB is considering doubling the rates for box trucks and tripling the rates for large trucks coming in. Well, it seems to me that that's not going to prevent those trucks from coming in. They have to. And they're going to pass on that expense to their retailers, who are going to pass it on to us. So it seems to me that's just punitive, and I guess gets the MTA some more money, but really doesn't accomplish much beyond that. That's all I want to say.
It just accomplishes the idea that there are weight issues. I even kept seeing on the news that all of those overweight trucks are now being fined or banned or fined, I guess, from the BQE, because they contribute to wear and tear of the streets, which I suppose would be another ancillary effect. To reduce congestion, you reduce wear and tear and the need to re-blacktop or deal with the infrastructure under the streets, and they cause a lot of congestion, and if they're diesel powered, they cause a lot of pollution. A concern that had been expressed here previously is the potential potential impact on small businesses that may rely on trips to let's say the flower district to pick up flowers and plants and associated items for their flower shops on the Upper East, Upper West, Bronx, Queens areas, and they will be charged. Contractors who have to drive through the zone, a lot of construction stuff, tiles, for instance, plumbing fixtures are downtown. They will be charged and they will pass it on. There are so many different issues of people, of trucks or cars, businesses, cultural institutions, all of those things being charged because of this. And then that Rubik's Cube, you take away from one, you add to another, you take away from a second, you add back to the first or the third. And so it's really hard to fit the puzzle together, and you're starting at a rather high rate. So triple $23 would be, because trucks don't deliver at night, maybe they would, is $69. That's a lot of money, and even for small business. So there are definitely a lot of issues, and I'm glad that Assemblymember Seawright is hearing about this again.
Thank you.
Again, not an answer. We just don't have any answers. All we could do is potentially raise issues. I don't know, Craig, do you want to add to that? Or
No, that's exactly it. That's where we are right now. And it's always been that we're going to have to wait to see what the Traffic Mobility Review Board determines. I mean, for all we know, they may have submitted something to the MTA and it just hasn't been issued yet. So I don't know if we have the ability to influence them at this point. And then it's just going to be a matter of what happens next and how this may move forward towards implementation. I just don't know, but that's where we are right now. It's sort of this waiting game. Abraham, yeah.
Yeah, Abraham.
Thank you, Craig, and thank you, Alita. That was actually kind of one of the questions I was going to have. I know we're in this wait and see to see what the TRMB is going to come up with, but have we given thought to maybe putting out or submitting some parameters of things we'd like to see? Again, I don't know how receptive they would be, but whether that's something we'd want to further do to see if we could influence, while we're in this waiting period.
Yeah. We have put out resolutions, and we've made suggestions to both the MTA and even before the Traffic Mobility Review Board was formed, I think we had some parameters that tried to lay out some of what we thought should be in place. Again, as I said, I know that MTA officials are aware of and do read our resolutions. But I think we have to also be cognizant of the reality, which is that whether we like it or not, us here in Community District 8 are not the ones who I think are at the top of the list of who the MTA is interested in trying to accommodate in terms of providing some of the potential discounts or addressing the pricing sensitivities that are being raised. I think that's just the reality of it. And they've stated all along that the fewer exemptions and offsets that they have, the better, because that way they could keep the base price lower for everyone. Lower being relative, of course. So right. It's always been challenging for us, and I think I think the chances it was always recognized that the chances were going to be relatively low that we would be able to get anything through and inform the final policies, but can't hurt to try.
And that's definitely true. We did have resolutions asking for discounts or exemptions for disabled people, for elderly people, talking about people working overnight in jobs, for low income people, and maybe other things as well. And we don't know what they're doing with it, but for an entity that thinks a 2-hour commute is not a transit desert, they're not really necessarily listening to us. So the best I think we can do, and they haven't had public comments, as I mentioned, at TMRB hearings, But
Mhm.
maybe when they give their recommendations to the MTA, there will be an opportunity for the public to weigh in. And New York City being what it is, the public has not been shy about raising their concerns from all parts of the city. They did find that there is only one transit desert in all of New York City, which is Breezy Point.
Thank you.
So I don't know if anyone has anything else in terms of a proposal for resolution. I don't know if there's been enough, or if anyone wants to say anything or add anything else.
And that's for board members only. And honestly, at this point, I'm not sure that there is anything that we can do at this point to significantly.
We can ask that they read our resolutions.
We've passed actually a healthy amount of resolutions, so I think I'm hard pressed to think of anything else that we can do right now. I understand that on the margins, perhaps there could be suggestions, but I think it's really just a matter of now seeing what the actual final proposal is, and then once it is that we respond to it, and then we would be in a position to be able to possibly have something that gets sent to our state elected officials who have the ability to change the law on a statewide basis and say, and if there's anyone that's asking for a policy change or relief of some sort, that we have that final TMRB fee structure to be able to respond to.
Well, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but out of concern for the hospitals and the patients who go to the hospitals from across the city and our cultural institutions that rely a lot on residents not in the district, tourists who are not in the district, that maybe weekend relief might help. It wouldn't help the hospitals. I guess the doctors are there during the week, but maybe in the evening. I don't know if it's an underline. I don't recall, and maybe whether any of our prior resolutions had to do with that, because I didn't think that they were or I don't know if you did, talking about weekend discounts. I thought it was just overnight and a very limited amount of time. I think at a prior TMRB hearing, they talked about the hours of 12 to 4, perhaps, just a 4-hour stretch. Maybe now it's expanded, but I have some concerns about patients. It feels like it's salt in the wound to charge patients an extra, especially those who have an acute illness or an acute injury that doesn't justify the New York State disability placard for cars, as well as people coming up to our museums. I wouldn't want to see them raise their rates, their entrance fees to $30 or $35. I think the Guggenheim is already at $30. That's a lot of money. And it excludes a lot of people, I think, from our world-renowned and esteemed and loved cultural institutions, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah. I'm just looking back now to try to see what resolutions we passed. I don't know that we spoke specifically to weekends. I know that the counter argument that would be made, and why I think it may not go very far, is that.
Oh no, Craig, you're frozen. It's like a
weekend. All right. Can you hear me?
Now I can. Weekends
Okay.
are, and then you keep getting cut off.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I apologize to everyone for that. That weekend traffic levels have largely returned to where they are, and that there's plenty of congestion during weekends, and I don't know if they will have a different pricing schedule for weekends or not. I don't know whether they would view that as something that they would be willing to entertain or not. I honestly don't know.
I, for one, would like to see Uber and Lyft be charged for this. It's their cars. We know the companies are making money every time someone takes an Uber or a Lyft or rents a city bike. And why are they exempt from paying fees when small businesses that have box trucks going into or through Manhattan to pick up or make deliveries are being charged? It just seems really, really unfair. And if they were charged, then maybe they pass the charges on, but everyone is doing that. We're taxed up to beyond our eyebrows, but it seems really unfair to the rest of the public, the residents, the businesses, visitors to and in New York, to be charged fees that may be lowered if Ubers and Lyfts were charged. The companies, not the drivers, and not more taxes on the passengers, but the actual companies themselves. That's what I would say, is that I won't use the words I was actually thinking, but it came as a surprise to me that the companies themselves would be exempt.
Yeah, I just don't know how that would work
How does it
in
not
reality,
work?
just on the structure of it. And I just don't think that that's going to really, in terms of how that affects the program itself, to me, it doesn't really achieve anything.
What doesn't
I
it achieve?
understand
It's
from
more
an emotional
revenue.
sense,
It would-
but I just don't know that it functionally, so the companies themselves are well endowed, have plenty of funds available. That's not going to harm them.
No, it won't, but it would provide more revenue to the MTA, perhaps relieving some of the burden of a tax on either passengers in their cars or people having to pay the toll themselves if the companies pay their fair share. They do have a lot of revenue, and they are making money from every trip, every round trip in or out, every trip in or out of the zone. I don't mean round trips, but every time someone is in the zone, they get money. And it seems really unfair that beyond everybody else and every other company is having to pay, I think, that they should be exempt when their vehicles contribute to congestion and contribute to pollution. And there is no way around it. Even if all of those vehicles were electric, they would still be contributing to congestion. It just doesn't seem fair that they are exempt. My opinion. Clearly. Well, I see I don't have a lot of followers on that, so I'll not say anything else.
Yeah, I don't know that I have anything to add right now. So if nothing else is left to discuss now, I welcome a motion to
adjourn. Is that what you're looking for?
to adjourn? Yes, I'm sorry, a motion to adjourn.
Well, I don't see one.
All right.
I see Ed has his hand raised. Ed?
Motion to adjourn.
All right.
Okay. Is there a second?
Decided maybe the absentee and early voting are on the other side.
I'll second it at this point.
I think Robin.
Okay. Robin raised her hand. So
seconded. So I guess we're adjourned.
all right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. And we'll try to, as soon as there's news on the TMRB, we'll hopefully try to have a meeting.
Yes. Have a great Thanksgiving, everyone.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Good night.